The Denver Broncos just made a statement in their stunning 21-17 comeback victory over the previously undefeated Philadelphia Eagles. This win really could kind of be a defining moment for this franchise. It could kind of flip the script, and I want to talk all about it. I want to talk about how the Broncos ultimately got this done and so much more. But before I begin, I would really appreciate it if you would drop a like and subscribe. It only takes 5 seconds, plus you can always change your mind. We are on the road to 60,000 subscribers, and with your support, I believe that we can get there super fast. Alright, so coming into this game, there was not a lot of confidence throughout the Broncos fan base in this team's chance to win this game. Most media outlets and analysts expected little more than a respectable showing from Denver, not an upset. I mean, after all, the Eagles entered this game as the defending Super Bowl champs. They were unbeaten at 4-0, and they have a balanced and explosive offense. They have a relentless pass rush, and also obviously that winning streak, which actually stretches back to an astounding 10 games. So Denver was a 4.5-point underdog, which actually isn't too bad, but that pretty much shows like everything that you need to know in terms of what the experts were thinking. Pretty much the only way the Broncos were going to be able to win this game was if Bo Nix played perfect and mistake-free, and the Broncos just took advantage of all their opportunities, because the Eagles, even though they're the best team in the league, they're not a perfect team. They do make mistakes, and the Broncos finally were one of the few teams that was able to capitalize in this instance. Denver's offense through the early part of this season has kind of looked out of sorts in certain situations outside of an explosive showing against Cincinnati, but that team is absolutely a mess, especially after they lost Joe Burrow. The Eagles, on the other hand, they execute. That's why they're the defending Super Bowl champs, and they just have weapons all over the field, so it's tough to game plan against them. So coming into this game, the big question was, could Bo Nix withstand the environment at Lincoln Financial Field and the multiplicity of the defensive looks that Philly would throw at him? And also, would J.K. Dobbins, who was fresh off a 101-yard game, find any daylight against a punishing front that the Eagles have? The sense internally and externally was that the Broncos would need to play above their talent level and avoid early mistakes, especially in the first quarter because of momentum, to avoid being run out of the building, and that's exactly what they did. They kept it close and they stayed in striking distance. But the Eagles did still dominate the first half. It played out as almost everyone anticipated. The Eagles defense suffocated Denver at every turn. The Broncos were limited to just 102 yards on 32 first half plays. They averaged a dreadful 3.2 yards per snap, and that production led to only one conversion on 8 third down attempts and 5 punts on 6 total possessions before halftime. So as a result, Denver managed just to have a mere field goal, a 55-yarder from Will Lutz, off a short field opportunity, and they really didn't have that much momentum going into half, but they stayed in striking distance. They made this a winnable game. But still, Bo Nix struggled to get in any sort of rhythm. He was missing throws, there were drop passes that weren't his fault, and then there was also relentless pressure, which made life twice as hard. 2 times in the early drives, he missed open receivers deep, including a brutal overthrow to Trent Sherfield and a bad sack on 3rd down that knocked the Broncos completely out of scoring position. At one point, an apparent fumble from Nix was reviewed and overturned, the first significant break that Denver would have in this game, but that drive fizzled out. And the Eagles' defensive front consistently collapsed the pocket, and they forced Nix into hurried decisions, and Zadarius Smith actually recorded a 13-yard sack, which really derailed a promising drive. Meanwhile, in that first half, Jalen Hurts on the other side of things asserted control. Their opening strike arrived via a 52-yard bomb downfield to Devontae Smith, a play that exploited confusion in the Broncos secondary and positioned Philly deep in the red zone. Hurts then connected with Dallas Goedert on a well-designed rub route for a 2-yard touchdown, which was the game's first major breakthrough, and it gave the Eagles a 10-3 lead. Really, Denver's only early bright spot was the defense getting clutch stops, led by Nick Bonitto and Zach Allen. Bonitto got a critical sack that really halted one of the Eagles' drives where they were threatening. So yeah, I know I said one of the keys to the game was dominating, getting off to a hot start early, but that's not what the Broncos did, and that's what makes this win even more impressive in my eyes. After halftime, this game really looked fully destined to disappoint all the Broncos nation. When the third quarter began, the Eagles flexed their muscle again. This time, they had a gorgeous 47-yard wheel route from Hurts to Barkley. Barkley streaked out of the backfield. He caught a pass in stride and outran 2 defenders to the end zone. And with that explosive play, the Eagles led 17-3, and that's when the Philly crowd really got into it. And it felt like this thing was pretty much over, but the Broncos obviously had other plans. Heading into the fourth quarter, the Broncos dialed dialed up a drive that really nobody saw coming. A 10-play, 64-yard march down the field. There weren't any spectacular chunk plays, just steady progress. Knicks began working short passes and leaning on Dobbins, who steadily churned out tough yards. And then Dobbins punched it in with a 2-yard touchdown to bring the lead to within 7. A holding penalty on Barkley sabotaged the Eagles' next drive, giving Denver the ball back with a chance to tie the game. Now all of a sudden the Broncos had some momentum and belief. You could really just see it. You could see the vibes on the sideline. And Bo Nix really delivered one of the most defining stretches of football, really, that we have seen so far in his career. He found Courtland Sutton deep over the middle for a game-changing 34-yard completion, and then backed up in a 3rd and long situation after a questionable pass interference call on the Eagles. He produced a pinpoint strike to convert yet again. Nix really directed traffic with a poise that you rarely see in young quarterbacks, especially these days. And then on a half roll out to the right, Nix spotted the veteran tight end in Evan Ingram, who slipped through a soft spot in zone coverage, and with the pressure closing in, Nix delivered a dart for an 11-yard touchdown, really electrifying the Broncos sideline. And then rather than settling for a tie, Sean Payton opted to try for the 2-point conversion, and Nix found Troy Franklin on a quick out route, and just like that, the Broncos had the lead, and you could really sense the momentum shifting. It was crazy. Things flipped just like that. With over a minute to play, Will Lutz extended the Denver lead to 4 with a clutch 36-yard field goal, and from there, that was that. The Broncos got a huge season-defining win, and I think it's going to be talked about for weeks to come. In terms of some of the stats from this game, Bo Nix put together an impressive line. He was 27 of 41 passing for 242 yards, and he had the pivotal touchdown to Ingram to tie the game up. J.K. Dobbins continued to cement his role as the focal point of Sean Payton's ground game. He followed up last week's 101-yard performance with 79 hard-fought yards and the confidence-building touchdown that started Denver's rally. And then Sutton, Franklin, and Ingram each came up big in key moments as pass rushers. Sutton's 34-yard catch loomed especially large, as did the sure-handed reliability of Ingram around the red zone. The offensive line definitely had a shaky start, but they settled in late and they provided Nix with just enough time to dissect the Eagles' secondary in crunch time. And defensively, Denver's depth really showed itself. Bonitto and Allen's sacks set the tone. Surtain shadowed the Eagles' star receivers, that's a tough task by itself, and the entire unit raised its level when it mattered the most. So yeah, I think this game's implications are enormous. For Denver, it's really validation of Sean Payton's process. It's one of those games that gives you confidence when you're in a tough situation later on in the season. It's also one of those games that puts this team over 500, and that's huge because if you win next week, all of a sudden you're 4-2, and that's a drastically different outlook than losing this game, winning next week, and being 3-3. I mean, that really could make or break actually getting to the playoffs. But yeah, that's really all I have to say for this video. I know this was kind of just a brief breakdown of this game. There's so much more to talk about, so much more going on with this team. But that's all I got for this one. Please be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Here's what some of the players had to say themselves following this win.
Honestly, I'm not sure. We just got in some tempo. We found successful plays, first down after first down, got some rhythm offensively, and started making plays work, and then scored a touchdown. And once we scored the first touchdown, it kind of felt good for our rhythm and momentum, and we did it again. I wasn't surprised. Next thing I knew, he was just giving me the hash, giving me the call, and knew we had one play to go get the job done. And Troy ran a great route, and we've been practicing that for a couple of weeks, and he got in the end zone. I mean, just trust in his players, and we got the job done.
That's all I got for this video. Thank you all once again for watching. Your support truly means the world. And until next time, I will see you all later.